Ay, 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 with our friends over at Torah Time, or wherever you watch and listen to your podcast. Welcome to our special Rosh Hashanah podcast. All right, so this special Rosh Hashanah episode of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show is being sponsored by Yoel and Ahuva Shmel. Now, I got to tell you, you say these things, but the fact is that, I remember Yoel as a little boy. This goes back. His dad and I were roommates in Los Angeles back in 19... But... I remember, when he got married and they were living in Memphis, and now that he's all grown up with children of his own, wow, sponsoring an episode. This has special meaning, and it should be big schus going into Rosh Hashanah and going into the new year. L'schus refuah shleima b'karo for Ahuva Tzivya Bas Rachel Perel. That's, of course, their daughter, and she actually started joining the shiurim together with her father in the Tefillah shir, so it's like really exciting now. We're part of the family again, yeah? And they write, "Thank you for your amazing shiurim and honest approach to real-life challenges and battles. We have gained much chizuk and inspiration. Thank you so much. You and your family have always been part of our family. And, Mitzvah Hashem, in the schus of being Marbitz Torah and Klai Yisrael, you should be Zaycha, you and your family, not just to refuah shleima, but to all bracha v'hatzlacha and good things of the chesiva v'chesima tova." And I started with the niggin, and I'll tell you why I started with the niggin. I told this story, I'm sure, at least once, but I was teaching tefillah, and there were no classrooms at the time. I was to the whole yeshiva, so we were doing it in the shul. And the shul had a very high ceiling and very good acoustics. So I was explaining that there are certain nigunim on Rosh Hashanah that we do, and I started with that niggin, the niggin that we do by Ma'ariv. And everybody joined in. And I couldn't finish the class. I was shaking. It suddenly transported me to that moment in Rosh Hashanah where you understand that this is the Yom HaDin. And I said, okay, well, I got to stop the class. I went to the office, and one of the other rebbeim saw me and said, yeah, what's the problem? And I told him what happened. And he says, oh, I think it was the Mateh Ephraim. He says, the nigunim that we use on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the nigunim themselves have the power to be ma'ora us to tshuva, to wake us up to tshuva. I've mentioned this in the past, that the Zohar Kodesh says that the Shari Nagina are next to the Shari Tshuva, and that certain music has the power to reach our neshama and to change our soul. So, when we talk about the nigunim. So I wanted to start by putting that in because it's Rosh Hashanah. It's Rosh Hashanah, Yom HaDin. Hine boez Yom HaDin. Hine boez Yom HaDin. And everything is going to be decided. It's a heavy concept. It's a heavy concept. A lot of people can't handle Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, it's too intense. And it is intense. It is intense. It is the difference between living a meaningful life and a meaningless life. And most people live a meaningless life because they don't have a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So they're never judged. So whatever I do is fine. Whatever I do is fine. And I never grow, and I never develop. I never become a better person. Because a person who's being judged understands that what I do has consequences. And therefore, it's not just how I feel. It has to be something that I'm doing that is meaningful. Am I doing this right or not? Not just, I want to be accepted for whatever I do. Did I do this right or not? And so a friend will tell you, yeah, this is something wrong. That's what din is. Din is this ability to be able to look beyond where you are to what you could be. So Rosh Hashanah is a concept of malchus. It's a concept of making Hashem the melech, because when you have a king, then you know what you're aspiring to. Now, we don't have this today. We don't know what that means. Now, there was a time when the melech was the embodiment of the will and the desire and the focus of the people. And everybody wanted to be whatever the king was. When you had a real king, when it was something special, not just like the story that they always tell when Revolbo was in Switzerland and the king of Norway was meeting the king of Sweden. And he went to make the bracha on seeing a king, but he says, I didn't see a king, I just saw two old men. There were no kings. A melech. Shlomo Melech lost his kingdom, but he was still king over his walking stick. There's a malchus that was there. There's a scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when they have to cross this bridge. Yeah, and the old man on the bridge, if you don't answer the questions correctly, you fall into the abyss of destruction or whatever it is. So the some of them make it across, some of them don't make it across. Some of them he asks easy questions, tricky questions. Anyway, when finally King Arthur comes and says, what is your name? I am Arthur, King of the Britons. What is your quest? I seek the Holy Grail. What is the average velocity of a sparrow? That depends, European or African. He says, I don't know that. And he falls over into the abyss. So his aide says, how did you know that? He says, when you're a king, you have to know these things. It was a concept of a malchus. The king was a higher form of what a person could be. They were more intelligent. They were greater. They exceeded. They exuded something that was beyond everything else. And with that comes din, because a melech has to be someone who is also the din. The Rambam refers to the melech as the leiv kol ha'am. He's the heart of the people. I have a penchant for history. I remember I had somebody in one of my shiurim say, I don't know, I've never been able to follow history. I'm just into math and the hard sciences. I said, well, good for you. But to me, history is fascinating because it's all about stories, all about people, Anyway, in my quest to try to get a deeper understanding of history, I have read some of the most boring books. I have to say, the most boring book I ever read was called An Economic History of the United States, and the anti-Semitic part didn't come until the last 5 pages. I would never have guessed. I guess he figures no one ever gets that far, but it's amazing. But one of the deans of Harvard had written a book called Andrew Jackson, The Symbol of an Era. And he says there are certain people who capture what the entire era is trying to say, the time, the place, the people, and they become that symbol of what a country is supposed to be, or what a period of time is supposed to be. And these people are bigger than themselves. They're symbols. That's what a melech is supposed to be. A melech is supposed to be somebody that we put, I was going to say on a pedestal, but more than that, on a throne. And that's who we're supposed to aspire to. And that's why to this day, gentlemen do not button their bottom button, because one of the Edwards, when he was King of England, was too stout to button his bottom button. So he would go with his jacket with the bottom button unbuttoned, and everyone says, well, the king does that. So of course, I'm going to go with my bottom button unbuttoned till I could be like the king. Because you had aspirations to be something more than yourself. Today, it's the exact opposite. People get onto Instagram or TikTok, or there might be some new one that I'm not familiar with, and they make videos of themselves and they say, I'm enormously fat, and that's fine. It's your problem if you think there's a problem. Well, no, it's unhealthy, and it's not really a good lifestyle, and you should be embracing it. So they do all kinds of different things, and they say, yeah, I'm celebrating me. Rav Noach Weinberg said an interesting thing. He said sometimes when someone's coming, they're trying to decide if they should stay in yeshiva or not. I say, are you a good person or a bad person? So right away they go, I'm a good person. I said, who's more likely to say they're a good person or a bad person? It's a very clever observation, because a bad person never thinks they're bad. They did a study of people on death row. They had very high self-esteem. That wasn't their problem. They lacked a sense of moral compass, but as far as how they felt about themselves, they felt very good. Yeah. They don't think they did anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. Other people have done things wrong. Me? Yeah. Whereas a good person says, I could have been better to my mom. I could have been nicer to my children. I could have been better to my spouse. They look at themselves and say, that was good, but I could be better. Yeah, it means that you're going to live your life with a certain amount of angst. Is this the best I could be doing right now? I've spoken in different places around the world, and I love living in Eretz Yisrael. I enjoy it. It gives me satisfaction. It's hard for me to live a full, healthy life spiritually outside of Eretz Yisrael. And yet, when I would go to speak someplace, they'll say, would you consider taking a position here? And I always say, if you can show me that it's Ratzon Hashem for me to come here, I'll come here. Because I'm not living in Eretz Yisrael because that's my value. My value is Ratzon Hashem. I believe I can do Ratzon Hashem better in Eretz Yisrael, but I went to a far off country, and I met with the fellow who was in charge of a very large institution, and they said to me, would you consider relocating here? And I said, if you could show me there's something I could do that would be different, So we talked through different options. We talked through this, we talked through that. 45 minutes we were talking. At the end, they said, I think this could really work out and you could make a major change. That was 4 or 5 years ago. I never heard from them again. But the point is that if you could tell me this is where I'm supposed to be, I want to do Ratzon Hashem. I want to do whatever it is that I know is going to bring glory to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Tatz was giving shiurim to hundreds of people in South Africa. Rabbi Becher was giving shiurim to hundreds of people in Toronto. And they both wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael. They came to Eretz Yisrael. And they were teaching in Or Sameach, the 12 guys. And Rabbi Moshe Shapiro was relentless, telling them, this is not Ratzon Hashem. So they went, Rabbi Tatz went to England, and Rabbi Becher went to America, and once again, they have enormous amounts of people that they're influencing. Rabbi Moshe Shapiro told them that was Ratzon Hashem. But if I'm just okay the way I am, who cares? I don't have to ask what Ratzon Hashem is. I don't have to ask what's the best I could be doing. I'm happy with me. Don't judge me. Don't tell me what I should be. Don't tell me how I should be. Okay. So you will live a life where at the end of your life, you will have done maybe nothing in your life because you were always satisfied. And you didn't want anyone to tell you anything. But when there's a judgment, when there's somebody to say to you, you could be better than this. You're capable of more. There's a clip of Sidney Poitier, who was a famous black actor. And he told the story over. And he says, I was a dishwasher in a restaurant. He says, and there was a a Jewish waiter. And I was walking, and I had a newspaper under my hand. And he says, "So, what's happening in the world?" And I said to him, "I don't really know. I don't read very well." So he says, "You want me to teach you how to read?" He says, "Yes, very much." And after his whole day of work, the whole restaurant was closed. He sat there with me every night. And Sidney Poitier is tearing up as he's telling this story. He says this random Jewish fellow took this black man and taught him how to read. And that's how I became an actor. And that's how I went on to do it, because I couldn't read the scripts. And he just took that kindness. Today, Sidney Poitier would say, "Why do I have to read for? I'm fine the way I am." It's your job to find something for me to do where I don't have to read. Or you could say, "I want to be more. I want to be better. I could achieve more." There was Tekufa where people were saying, you can't expect athletes to push themselves so much. It's not fair. Athlete. The whole idea of an athlete is you're going to do your personal best to show that you're the best. No, it's okay. It's unreasonable to ask people to push themselves. Everyone knows the story when the Netziv brought out one of his svarim. He says, I really wasn't a gifted kid. I wasn't that smart. It was a big sacrifice for my parents to have to get a Rebbe to teach me. And I heard them talking one night, and they said, "Listen, we're wasting our money. This kid's never going to be anything. Yeah, let him become a shoemaker, apprentice him, let him learn a job, make a living." And when I heard that, I pushed myself very hard, and that's how I became the Netziv. And imagine that I didn't. At the end of my life, I'd get up to Shemayim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu would say, "So what'd you do with your life?" I said, "I was a shoemaker. I davened 3 times a day, and I learned, and I brought my children up from..." And Hashem would say, "That's it? Where are all the svarim you were supposed to have read?" But I never did it because I never pushed myself. Rosh Hashanah says it's not good enough. You have to be more than you are. Says the Gemara in Shabbos. Yeah? We say Malchios, Zichronos, and Shofros. In Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, we say 10 psukim of Malchios, 10 psukim of Zichronos, 10 psukim of Shofros. The Gemara says, Hashem remembers everything that we did. That's the Zichronos, that's how he judges us. We make Hashem Melech, and the Gemara says, Ubama b'shayfer. That's why we say shayfer. The shayfer is the means. Which is what makes this Rosh Hashanah, of course, particularly special, because it comes out on Rosh Hashanah, and we don't blow shofar. So we're lucky, we here in Eretz Yisrael. Normally we don't get a second day Yontif. For Rosh Hashanah we do. So Sunday we'll blow shofar. But on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the Ikar Yom Adin, we're not going to do it. But the whole shofar is the means. We blow the shofar and Hashem moves from the kisei din to the kisei arachamim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu moves from judgment to mercy. We don't have the shofar. So what happens in a year like this? Where's that shofar? So Moshe Feinstein says like this. He says, Saadia Gaon famously brings down 10 reasons why we blow shofar. Things that we're supposed to remember, things that we're supposed to focus on, that comes from Tekiyah shofar. And one of them is to remember the words of the Chachamim. So it says with Moshe, we don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah when it comes out on Shabbos because the Chachamim said, don't blow shofar because you might end up carrying the shofar. And so they're mavatal, the mitzvah d'oraisa of shofar, which is, by the way, the essence of Rosh Hashanah. And the Torah, Rosh Hashanah is not called Yom Adin. It's not called Rosh Hashanah. It's called Yom Truah. It's the day of the shofar. And we don't blow it. Because we're focusing instead on the fact that the Chachamim told us to do it. And by listening to the Chachamim, that's how we get the power of the shofar. That's what we're tapping into. So we're going to go into Rosh Hashanah. And you can look at yourself and you say, I'm fine. Or you could say, you know why there are Chachamim? You know why there are Rabbanim? To help us become better than we are. They have a key to understanding human nature. There's a power to it. I always quote Dr. Schroeder because he has 2 PhDs, one in oceanography and one in nuclear physics. I don't have a degree in nuclear physics. or oceanography. The government has never brought me to supervise nuclear tests. I was in Or Sameach, and they brought in all the speakers to give their, resume they could write up about them. So Rabbi Wein went first, and 2 days later they called in Rabbi Gottlieb. 2 days later they called in me. And they said, okay, this one's listening, this position they held, this degree they have, this, So I said, I'm married and I live in Har Nof. They said, is that it? So, and I teach in Or Sameach. They said, that's it? You don't have any degrees or anything? I said, I have a BA in psychology from Queens College. So Gottlieb says, really? I said, yeah, it's my wife's. She's not using it. She said I could have it. So I'd rather quote Dr. Schroeder, yeah? He would explain a chazal from a scientific point of view. And he'd stop and he'd say, there's a reason they're called sages. Now, these were very smart people. When they said something, they understood. The fact that people are Nevada D'Rabbanan, that they treat it like, it's an amazing thing. The Gemara in Bracha says, if you don't have a Ma'ariv, you chayv Misa. That doesn't say that by Shachar and Mincha. Why? Because Ma'ariv is only D'Rabbanan. You could argue all tefillas are D'Rabbanan, but it was a reshus. The Rabbanan told you to do it. And if you're cavalier with the words of the Chachamim, you don't take it seriously. It leads to all kinds of terrible things, consequences. The Rabbanan were very careful when they set things up. There's a powerful idea. It says by Shlomo Melech that the Torah tells you don't have too many wives because they'll turn your heart away from Hashem. Shlomo Melech says, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that because I'm so smart. Smartest guy around. I'm really secure. So, 1,000 wives. Which makes you wonder, right? He had a cheshbon, why, etc. Take a look in Mechtam Eloyahu. He explains what his whole consideration was. But the fact that he would, he died at 52. I think it's obvious why. Because if you make the cheshbon, he spent most of his life in Sheva Brachas. And there's only so many burekas and parva ice cream you can eat before it. Anyway, nobody brings that down. But, he had 1,000 wives. And he says, because this doesn't apply to me. And the Yud, the little Yud, Lo Yarbe, comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, Shlomo Melech is ignoring me. So Hashem says, then he's going to trip up. And Hashem made him trip up. Not that he would have tripped up. He was right. But you're going to be smarter than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I told you not to do it, and you're going to say, I'm too smart. And there's a brisa in Shabbos, which is similar, where they said, do not read by the Or HaNer. On Shabbos, don't read by a candle. Now, a candle is not a paraffin stick like we have today. Their lamps were, and that's why on Ner, Rashi says in Old French lampa, they were, think of like an Aladdin's lamp, where the genie comes out. And they would open up the little top and put in oil, and then they would stick the wick in the little spout where the genie came out, and they would light it. And that was in there. That was what they used for candles. And the problem is that as the oil starts to get low, the light begins to flicker. So the Chacham were worried that if you were reading, you wouldn't realize it, and you would tip it forward to be able to get more oil to the wick, and that's an Issa D'Oraisa. So they made a Gezerah D'Rabbanan, not to read by such a candle, lest you violate the Torah's law of making a fire. So it tells Bryce tells the story of this one Tana who says, I'm not going to do that. I have pretty good hold of myself. I know what I'm doing. So he was learning by the candle, and he saw it starting to flicker, and he reached up to tap it, and he caught himself at the last second. And he said, that's because I went against the words of the Chachamim. Meaning, I was right. I wouldn't have done it. But because I violated the laws of the Chachamim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu worked it out that I lost that ability. I lost that siyata d'shmaya. I lost that normal control I would have had because I was too clever by half. I'm smarter than the Chachamim. And as Dr. Schroeder says, there's a reason they're called sages. So we're going into Rosh Hashanah, and we don't have our major weapon, which is a shofar. B'meh b'shofar. So we don't have that. So what are we going to do instead? We're going to daven. We're going to recognize that it's Rosh Hashanah, that it's Yom Adin, and we're going to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you told us to blow shofar, and the Chacham told us not to. And we're listening to the Chachamim like you told us to. You know the amazing Gemara with Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Amazing. Where they're arguing over whether or not a particular earthenware oven can become tahar, ritually pure or not. There's a whole argument. Anyway, Rabbi Eliezer could not convince everybody. And so he says, if I'm right, let the river run backwards. And Rabbi Yehoshua, who was leading the opposition, said, sorry, we don't pass by rivers. He says, if I'm right, let the tree fly through the air. And the tree flies through the air. And Rabbi Yeshua says, we don't pass by trees. He says, if I'm right, let the walls of the Beis Medrash fall in. And they start to fall in. Rabbi Yeshua says, you stay out of this. So they didn't know what to do. So they say it stayed curved. And then he says, if I'm right, let a baskol come out from heaven. Let HaKadosh Baruch Hu say I'm right. And a heavenly voice comes out and says, Rabbi Eliezer is right. And Rabbi Yeshua stands up and points and says, Lo b'shamayim hi. Stay out of this. Wow. The Gemara concludes that somebody who was learning with Eliyahu Navi comes down every now and then to learn with people if you're on the level. And he said, what happened in Shemayim at that moment? So Kosh Baruch Hu says, my children have defeated me. Ad Kedei Kach, Kosh Baruch Hu says, listen to the Chachamim to the point that if I say it's not like that, they have the power to overrule me. And that's really the nature of Rosh Hashanah. You know, Gemara Rosh Hashanah spends a lot of time talking about the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. Right? How do you make the month? So now the calendar's been set because we don't have a Beis Din anymore. But in the good old days, you never knew when a Yom Tov was going to come out. because you didn't know if a month was going to be 29 days or 30 days. So today it's set, but back then, witnesses would come and they would say if they saw the moon, if they didn't see the moon, which means Rosh Hashanah could have been today, could have been tomorrow. So that's the basis, of course, for Yontav Sheni, why we have 2 days of Yontav and Chutz La'aretz. So the Chazal say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the angels, tomorrow is Yom Adin. And they open up the books of life and death, and they open up the books of all the actions of all of the people, and they set up the court, and the prosecutor is there, and the defense attorney is there, and everything's all set, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not there. So they go to the Pargod, they knock on the Pargod, they say, hey, God, where are you? He says, the Beis Din Shel Mata decided that tomorrow is Rosh Hashanah, not today. They said, but you are God. He says, I know, but I gave this power to them. They make this decision. And so that's the power the Chacham have when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. Even though Rosh Hashanah, Hashem is the Melech. He's the king. The king makes all the decisions, but the king said, listen to the sages. Listen to the Chachamim. When Rabbi Akiva was in prison, one of his Talmidim was bringing him water. So enough water so he could wash his hands, so he could eat his bread, and water to drink. And the guard said, this is too much water, and he spilled out half of it. So he brings it to Rabbi Akiva, and he washes his hands, and he eats the bread. And the Talmud starts crying. He says, Rebbe, you're not going to have any water to drink. You're not going to be able to live without water. He says, I'd rather die than go against the words of the Chachamim. Someone told me a fascinating thing. I don't know if it's true. That there are from people, Orthodox people. And they say, the Charedim, they wash every time they have bread. They're ultra-Orthodox. Anytime they eat bread, they wash. And non-from Jews, they never wash. And we wash on Shabbos. During the week, we don't wash. What could that possibly mean? Rabbi Akiva said, I'd rather die than not wash and go against the words of the Chachamim. An amazing thing. That people will just play fast and loose with Dinei D'Rabbanan. But the whole reason that we're able to get through Rosh Hashanah without blowing shofar is because we're listening to the Rabbanan instead. We're following the words of the sages. Oy. Hine boes yom hadin. That's why I always try to wear a gold tie in Rosh Hashanah. Because gold represents din. Right? Silver is rachamim. Gold is din. Because, red, right? Red represents din, blue represents rachamim, and gold is really yellow and red mixed together. That's what gold is. So it's a type of red. And that's why, even though we brought the Egel HaZahav, which was gold, we make up with the Para Aduma, which is red, because red and gold is an inherent relationship between the two. So that's the idea. The idea is that we're going in for din. And you want to make sure that when you walk into Yom Adin, especially when Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos, that we know that we've done what we're supposed to do to make sure that we can say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though you told us to blow shofar today, the Chacham say not to. My children have defeated me. And it's in the schus of that we're going in, and that's going to take the place of the Tkiyah Shofar. As Rav Saadia Gaon says, following the Chacham is one of the ideas of what Tkiyah Shofar represents. So, Emir Hashem, as we go into this Rosh Hashanah, which is Shabbos, as a Chassid Shavart, Chassid Shavart, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to write everybody either into the book of life or the book of death. But we know that Hashem keeps the Torah, right? When they asked Rabbi Akiva, how could Hashem make it rain? He's carrying. He says, no, Hashem only has one Rishus, so for him it's not carrying. But he didn't say, well, he doesn't have to keep the Torah. Hashem keeps the Torah. He follows by his own rules. So he says, how is he allowed to write into the book of life and book of death? You're not allowed to. He says, Weiss says he can only write into the Sefer Chaim because you're allowed to do that on Shabbos because of Hatzalas Nefashos to save a life. But he can't write into the book of death. He can't do that. So it's a special school of when Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos for us to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to write us in Mirza Hashem in a book of life, and we should all be Zoicha this year to a good gebenchte Yar. I give you the bracha that my mother used to give me. I wish you everything that you wish for yourself, and us and Klal Yisrael should all be Zoicha to a Chesiv Chasim Tova.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode. And we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.